All right, people. Yes, I'm late. It's 4:39, but it's Thursday. And I'm sort of excited about what I want to talk to you about, but I never feel fully prepared, so you know how it goes. Well, that's good. That's working. All right, so it's PrinterBot Live. Welcome. Brooke Drum here, CEO, founder of PrinterBot. And Dave has got my back. I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. And that's going to annoy me. I don't know how loud that's coming through, but anyway, hope you had a Merry Christmas. I had a good Christmas. It was very low-key. Really wanted to just spend time with friends and family, and we did that. Dave even came over. We had a good time, right? Had a good meal, good time. We started a fire in the backyard. Ben, Dave's kid, enjoyed that, learned a little fire safety. So it was cool. But anyway, so now we're looking at the new year, and I gotta say that my thought time has been looking forward to next year. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I want to do next year, and might be fun to get on Twitter and I'll share what your one goal. You know what? I'm going to stop this just because I can't live with it. It's not just the fan on this printer that bugs me. It's just a little bit loud. It sounds like a jet engine. But we've got this new power supply I'm testing. I'll tell you about this. But anyway, so my thoughts are going to the new year. What do I want to do this year? I got a couple of things I want to talk about today. But while I was distracted by this, I thought I'd show you. So just as been over this, like it's been over the last 6 years, power supplies are actually hard to buy in quantity. And you know, we've been looking for a good 12-volt power supply that has enough amps to power. That's hot, a heated bed. And this one's, you know, really pretty powerful heated bed on this Pro. But, you know, if you have a Plus or even a Simple with a 6x6, those can draw a lot of amps. So you can't just use a laptop power supply like this, which is fine for, you know, no heated bed. But some people like the heated bed, even if they're printing with PLA. And the, I'm going to grab that off. It depends. You know, there's all these choices on what you want to use. Heated bed as an option on all of our printers. The Plus always came with it. We used to use Kapton because ABS printing was really popular, and you could just kind of clean it with alcohol, denatured alcohol, or even acetone. And ABS sticks really well to Kapton tape or polyimide. But of late, there's been some new late in the last couple of years, people have started to use PEI. So we have this Flex, man, that's hot. This is a spring steel bed. This is the nickel-plated one. This ships with our new Simple Pros. It's not going to be in the Amazon Simple Pros. Those are without a heated bed. You can always upgrade to this through our store. But this has become my method of choice when it comes to a heated bed because it flexes and you can get the print off a lot easier. But frankly, with PEI, if you just let it cool, it will come off very easy. I just printed this little itty-bitty Yoda head. It's always a little bit of a joke with me. Yoda heads are not the point of 3D printers. But my programmer was printing this Yoda head to test some things I'm going to tell you about. And when I went to take this off the bed, it just went like that, where if I was printing with blue tape, this is just PLA, blue tape, it would have a little blue tape residual on the bottom. And, you know, if it was a large Yoda head, large print, you would be getting not a chisel per se, but you'd very carefully be prying it up and trying to get the tape off, and it's hard, and you can hurt yourself. So this PEI is really nice because, and we sell this in the store, by the way. I'm not trying to sell you stuff. I'm just telling you what I'm thinking. This PEI is nice because you can heat it up, use it with the heated bed, and it actually, PLA does print well on it. It looks like I didn't totally have this first layer dialed, so I need to bring my calibration down a little bit. And it was very easy to get off. And if you have, if you don't want to run the heated bed, you could still use this, a spring steel plate like this. Some people make them out of polycarbonate. and then you could just put blue tape on it, and then it would be easier to get a large print off of this. Underneath this bed, if you don't know, is a magnet, several magnets, like 14 magnets, I think. Is that right? 14 magnets. They're rare earth magnets, so you can see it's really, really strong, and it's actually so strong it's a little bit of a, it'll fight you. But it dials in on the location on these 4 screws. And so it just stays there. It's just this magnet that stays there. So we do this for the Pro, but we're getting ready to sell these spring steel beds for other sizes. But anyway, if you have a heated bed and a little PEI, that's an improvement. And the flex steel is even bigger improvement. But so all these printers have options for heated beds, but it takes a lot of amperage to power it. We had one that was slightly larger than this. I don't think I have one here. I see the question, by the way, and I'll get to that. But what was I saying? You need a lot of amps for a heated bed. This one happens to be 12 volts, 29 amps. And it's even smaller than our, at least thinner profile, than the one that we've been using. We're on our second one from Meanwell. And the problem with these is we have to print a cap, or we could make it in metal if we wanted to, because you've got mains voltage coming in here, and you wouldn't want to touch that. So we've got to make it safe, and we got to print something over here. But it is a nice looking case. It's switchable power supply. You can switch it to 240 or whatever the other voltage is overseas. So this is the one we're going to switch to very soon with our little printed cap, and it'll sit there. I'll be safe behind if you're running a heated bed. So why have I stayed with 12 volts? Well, I started with 12 volts, and I am increasingly being convinced that, yeah, 24 volts will be the way of the future. These printer boards, they do support, originally it was up to 19 volts, but it'll support 24 volts. If you just take a printer board, like an F6, and plug 24 volts into it, you're good to go. Problem, you might burn out your fans, and the other problem is we've never had a 24 volt hot end. So I would be encouraging you to go to E3D or some other competitor. And I don't want to do that, right? So that's why we've developed Carl left me a note. Brooke, right on the front here. This is our, finally, production, no more changes. There's always been little incremental changes. Actually, I will tell you about one change that Carl just told me about. But he just wants to make these hot ends better and better and better and better. And so, but this is from the machine shop. Everything's machined exactly the way that it will be. This is a 24 volt, 90 watt, high temp, high flow, hot end. Now, he talked me into going with a 0.4 tip. By the way, mental note, Dave, on the product page, we got to switch to 0.4 because it's going to ship not with a 0.6 or 7.5 or whatever we had, 0.4. Here's why. This will work for PLA, it'll work for anything, all the way up. This will go to 500C. But he was printing with a 0.4, and he realized, there may be some people that just want the extra wattage, and they're just going to print PLA or the low temp stuff. They don't have to print high temperature. But one advantage of this little guy is the temperature sensor. He had a manufacturer make these for him, and out of 100 that he had made for a test run, they only delivered 60-some. And when he was assembling them, the wire that's inside these sleeves it's smaller than a human hair. It is so fragile. And so he puts it in this sleeve, which helps. He puts this fiber, or this high temp, some sort of fiberglass sleeve even on the end, and he actually pots that with ceramic into a cartridge. So if you pull on that blue, you're not pulling on the hairline wires. So it's not like it's going to break. But our early ones, we'll have some of these with these fragile connectors. Some people are just silly. They just start pulling. They start pulling on the ends, and if you pull on the end very hard, I could break it. But that's true of anything, I guess. But anyway, so he's got this cartridge, and he was just like, you know what? He's going to make his own, so he's got jigs, and he's got all the stuff in his shop to be able to make these himself, because he wants a thicker gauge wire, and there's a bunch of technique that goes into making these by hand. But he'll be able to vet them, and he knows what he can make, and so these don't sell. They're not selling real well right now, but I think once people get to know what the significance of this guy is, a 24-volt hot end that can go to the moon and do any material. And this is compatible with the Olson Ruby, I believe, the tip, but I could be wrong. We're working on I think it's going to end up being ceramic, a ceramic tip solution that is just as, you know, the Olson Ruby has a ruby in the end, so it doesn't wear out with carbon fiber. Carl's working on a ceramic. That's a little bit of ceramic on the center that has the orifice. So pretty cool. It'd be cheaper than the Olson. But anyway, now we have a 24-volt hot end. So yes, you could run a PrinterBot at 24 volts. And a 24-volt power supply, you'll have to get your own. I don't sell them. And this 24-volt hot end, or another 24-volt hot end, that's fine. But the old printer board is kind of old news, so that's why I have these two on the shelf here. It is 8-bit architecture. You know, it's like an 8-bit chip. It's old technology. It's basically an Arduino. It's actually a teensy, the code that it's an Atmel chip from way back, and it's actually got more expensive to keep buying that old chip than it is to buy an ARM chip that's a 32-bit architecture. So everybody's moving to 32-bit eventually. Prusa, I believe, now I don't remember if his Rambo board is 32 bits. I think that it is. I'm not sure. But anyway, so you'll see 3D printers move to 32-bit architecture. We've got the G2 board. We've had it for, I guess we've got it working for a couple of years, but it's been a year that it's been for sale. And it runs off 12 volts. Well, I do have some versions in-house. I'm testing a 24-volt power supply with the G2 board. And, you know, I've talked about it before, but yes, we'll eventually go to 24 volts. But let me just tell you the goal before I answer another question. The goal is, yes, everything PrinterBot ships to be 24 volts. I would also like all of the heaters in these big printers. I have one on the floor over there. You don't have to show it, but the Plus Pro uses AC mains for the heat bed. We use those Kinovo. They're really nice silicon pads. They're expensive, but they're silicon pad heaters, and man, are they fast. It's ridiculous. So with those really fast silicon heated beds and a 24-volt, 90-watt hot end, man, it's like the best of all the worlds. So I just have to change some components on the G2 in the next run that we manufacture to go to 24 volts, and we'll be in 24-volt land. This is a 12-volt, so we have to support our legacy stuff. I don't have it in here. I just took it outside. Well, there's one here. So the 24-volt looks like that. You know, it's pretty beefy. And wouldn't you know it, they put the end at the wrong, what's it called, a polarity. So we have to either modify the end or put in a, you know, we'd change the board, I guess we could. But anyway, the way that it is right now, we have to put this adapter on the end. But we're not shipping these per se. We use them for the CrawlBot and some of our CNC stuff. But yeah, I want to get to 24 volts. Any idea when the ceramic nozzle tip release will be? No. And Carl would shoot me if he knew I just told you about it. But I just want you to know, I have wanted to have this work, our hot ends work with the Ruby. Actually, it's the Ubis 13S that I believe is compatible with the Olson Ruby, but it's like $100 or $120 for that Ruby tip. And we want to get these tips outfitted with a ceramic that will not wear out, and you can just stop buying tips because these things wear out if you run that carbon fiber stuff. So we're working on it. Carl is funny because working on it may mean it's out in a year, and it may mean he shows up next week with a completed version. But he's a smart guy. He's working on it. Up until then, get a UBIS 13S. This actually won't work with the Olson unless you have an adapter piece of brass in here, because the tips on these, there's a longer melt zone on these. There's 2 heater cores instead of the 1. So anyway, when will it be released? I don't know. Was there another question after that? Yeah. So yes, 24 volts in our future. Have you tried printing carbon X nylon filament? No, I read about it. I printed nylon, I print carbon, but this kind of is the best of both worlds. I talked to some chemical guys a couple years ago, and they said, well, we'll make anything you want, and the industry's been using carbon fiber chop in nylon for kind of a best of both worlds. Nylon's very, very tough. It's very, very, just on its own. It's a really crazy material, but it's hard to print. So adding this carbon fiber and whatever they've done, if they've got a copolymer in there, some other plastics, to make it easily printable. But no, I need to get some. I'll order some and check it out. It will wear out your nozzle. Pardon me. So anyway, on to why I've got the two printers up here. So I discovered, and keep the questions coming if you got more. Are there any more?
When do you think the heat bed upgrade will be out for printrbot.cloud, or update, excuse me?
Yeah, so that's what I want to talk about. So there is, here's the question. So when will the heat bed be enabled for just printing via the cloud? So we put a heat bed on here because you can do USB printing, and it's weird. Okay. Because you can do USB printing and use the heat bed. And I guess some people assume that they're looking for a, turn on the heat bed in the UI in the cloud. And that's what we've been working on this week. I've been trading emails every day for the past few days with my programmer. And yeah, we want to put that in the UI so it's just easy. When you turn on Brim or turn on, what was the other one? Support, you can turn on the heat bed, right? Put in a temperature. But there is a solution for you guys that want to use the heat bed with the cloud. So what I did here was I put on a GCO file, .gco. So here's what you can do, and a lot of people don't know this, but let me tell you a little trick with the cloud. And this is just a precursor for what we want to work into the UI, so it's very easy to do without having to slice externally. But right now, you could take, and I went through today, and on our support forum, which, by the way, there's a bunch of new people with printers, and they're coming to our support site in the forum. And if you should, I invite you to go to our forum and help some of these people out. Because a lot of times they're not reading instructions, to be honest. Sometimes they're just common, they can't get it to stick to the bed, and they haven't read, you can recalibrate your Z height, or they've got the wrong type of tape, or whatever they're doing. We are a community of 3D printers, and we would love some help in the forums to answer questions and whatnot. Now, when I was in the forums today, I noticed there were one thing I don't like about forums is old, bad information is still accessible. So I was looking at some stuff, and this isn't a critique of Dave or any of the support people's work, but when you have Google, like printrbot.talk.com is a community of Printrbot people, and if you did a Google search, it'll look on that forum for some people that are very unhappy with some things with our early printers. When they were fixed, those problems really went away, but they're still readily available. People griping about old features that need to be added that have been added. So anyway, the forum, you just have to, it's like a never-ending, it'll never ever stop. But we do need help in there. There's newbies that are making common mistakes you can help them with. I'm on Twitter doing that all the time, and Google+, if people have questions. I try to answer it whenever I have time to. But join our support forum. And I am watching very closely on the G2 stuff because that's what I want to talk about. So anyway,
I went on there, and there are instructions on how to print with a .g-code file, a G-code file, .gco. So basically what we've done is in the cloud you can upload an STL file. And you can just use your browser and upload an STL file. As long as it fits within the parameters of the build envelope, it will slice it for you based on the settings from easy dropdowns. All right, the cloud is free. You do have to have a serial number. When you order one of these, you'll get one. But anyway, some people have been asking, well, I want to use the cloud with my G2 board that I got for my Simple or my Plus or whatever. And in the forum, there's a misunderstanding about the G2. So the G2 is our new 32-bit electronics that runs completely new firmware. And sometimes the new is hard to swallow, you know what I mean? So people were asking, but I want to just save my build platform to EEPROM on the printer, and I used to be able to do that with an old printer board, 8-bit, and I can't do that with the new G2. Well, that's technically right. You can't do that because it's completely different firmware. So I really invite you to, I pulled up the page and I got a bunch of notes. I need to edit these down and give them to Dave, but I went through, there's a getting started guide for the Simple Pro. It's very good. There's, if you happen to get an Amazon bot and it doesn't have the latest firmware and you want to update that firmware, another caveat, yes, you have to have a Mac, but there's instructions on how to update that. The G2 core firmware that we run is the mainline stuff that TinyG runs. So you can go to their wiki. There's links to their wiki. You can find out all sorts of stuff about the G2. One interesting thing about the G2 is, here's let me give you 3 reasons why I want to move completely off the printer board onto the new G2 for all of my equipment going forward. One is it does real-time acceleration, 5th or 6th order acceleration. It's a technical way of saying it takes corners, it does cornering and speed really, really, really sophisticatedly. Is that even a word? I think by saying that, I'm not sophisticated. But anyway, so it does really cool acceleration, and that means potentially you can really dial your printer up to print much faster. I did see on the forums, there's some guys that, yeah, it was different to learn the vernacular and the code that you have to use to set up your printer, and it's different than the old printer board. But once they got it dialed in, they were like, oh my gosh, it's so fast. It's because they read the wiki, they looked through all this documentation, and they really dialed in their printer to go as fast as humanly possible. So you can go much, much faster than your stock printrbot with a G2 board. And it is quieter. But also, it's really neat that the old Marlin firmware, this isn't neat. The Marlin firmware, basically, you give it a command and it says, okay, and that's all communication you get back. Well, the G2 has this, there's a technical term for it, but it's basically 2 USB channels open up, and one can be sending and one can be receiving. So you can actually do a lot of really sophisticated things. So there was even this link to, in the wiki, to communication protocol, and they describe how G2 is far superior to Marlin in this communication because it can intelligently feed back stuff, and you can, you know how it is when you hit pause and the buffer is full on the chip, and so it's, you know, and you're yelling at your printer, I just said pause, and it has to do the rest and go through the list of commands that it has, and then finally when it gets to the end and it hears that pause, it'll pause. Well, there's commands, there's real-time commands that you can do with the G2. There's a bunch of different commands that programmatically it's always looking for, and so it'll stop instantly if you want to do a feed hold or whatever. So it is more advanced, but we have to just do a better job of documenting this and showing you how it will work. But there are people that have taken their simple G2 board and put it in their printer. Here's one example. So this I'll tell you about. But right now you can just order a G2 board and put it into your printer. It has a USB-B connection, and I have a USB-B. plugged in here. I cut a hole in my Simple to accommodate, so I can just use the same screw holes for, it's the same footprint with the same screw hole pattern as the old printer board, but you got to cut a hole in your printer. But I was fine to do that, and so I did that. So you can run with Cura, or there's others that work, but not Matter Control, not Simplify 3D, and there's probably others that don't work, but Cura, Repetier, even Pronterface works just with this USB cable on any platform. But anyway, so that's what we've sold, just the board. But what I've done here, this is the future. This is where I want to go. And so we're adding features to the cloud to be able to utilize this power board here. So this is just, you know, the old printer, the old Simple printer. It didn't have a power switch, believe it or not. You had to like just unplug it to unplug it, or keep it on a power strip and turn it on and off on the power strip, which was silly in retrospect. I'm not sure why I did that. But this has a discrete power board that provides power to both the hub and to the G2. And it actually has some untapped power. It has a couple of relays here. So eventually you'll be able to remotely turn this off. This is a safety feature. So we can turn things on in the right order and turn it off remotely if we want to. But that's not revealed to you guys yet. It's discrete, so as far as noise, like EMF, am I saying that right? Electromagnetic something frequency. When you get your testing on the board, you don't want it to be a very noisy board. And when you got a lot of amperage going through that board, it'll be noisy. So a discrete power board is kind of nice. And then, of course, the printer hub. So this power board with the power switch and the printer hub, I should say, is what is keeping people with the G2 board from being able to access the cloud and use this nice little touchscreen. So I haven't devoted a lot of time. I've just been doing other things, but now I'm ready to make it possible for anyone, if they want to dump their printer board, their old school printer board, and add the touchscreen features that we have with the new printer. So not just the G2, but the power board and the printer hub. So anyway, this isn't completely configured right because I just pulled this off of the G code that's on here that has been sliced in the cloud. Don't have these overrides I'm about to tell you about. So, but you can see that it will run. I haven't sold these 2 units yet, and I'm getting ready to here at the first of the year. This is just a test square. So it's going to fail miserably because I haven't used my little trick that I'm about to tell you about. But you can see that it is possible to different. It'll fail here in a minute too, because some of these motors are different than how these motors are set up. The dimensions are different. This was sliced for this printer. Anyway, but it will run, and I'm just going to turn it off before it starts making a bunch of noise. But here's the trick. So when we did the cloud, we force just very few choices with your slicing, and we're wanting to open that up. We're wanting you to be able to add any size tip. Right now this is 0.3, and that's your only option in the cloud. Right now we constrain it to the dimensions of the Simple Pro, and we want to open that up so that you can run any printer. I mean, we've got printers with 4x4x4, 4x4x5. These are inches build volume. 6x6x6, 6x8x6, 10 by, I forget what the Super Z is. Is it 10? The Plus is 10 by 10 by 10. I've got all kind of different variations. So obviously, if you're going to run the cloud with a touchscreen, you're going to need to be able to change the volume. And people opt for different size tips, so before it slices, you got to be able to put that in. But here's one way to do that right now. When we were having issues with our slicer failing, I said to my programmer at the time, hey, I want to be able to upload any G code. Forget the renderings, forget the pretty pictures that render the STL file, looking real pretty, so when you look at your touchscreen, you can see what model that you're printing and selecting. So we do have sort of a back door that we put in there. If you slice in Cura, and there's instructions on the form to do this. If you slice it in Cura, and then you follow the instructions, you have to zero out your starting G-code. You can print your own slice. So let's say you want to do 0.12765 layer height. Well, you could do that. That's not an option in our cloud. It's either 0.05, 0.1, or 0.2. But you could do your own slice and do that. Well, you can actually put in the starting G code a little G2, like for instance, this one, M100.1, parentheses, curly brace, HE3E:T, curly brace, parentheses. That's all you need to turn on your heated bed. So there is a code that you can enable your heated bed in your G code that you've sliced in Cura, and then all you have to do is upload that as a .gcode file. And really it just means changing your extension on your G-code file that you sliced in Cura. So that's one thing. So on this one, that's what I did. I changed the Yoda, or Ryan did it, my programmer. All he did was slice the Yoda head in Cura based on the instructions that we give him. And then he added into the starting G-code the tiny G command to turn on the heat bed to a specific temperature. And that's it. So you can run this with the cloud, but you do have to slice in Cura outside of the cloud and just upload it as a .gco file. But we're testing all of the different abilities that we have. Like I'm going to change out the tip and test different tip sizes. I'm going to use different size printers this week and test the cloud with the touchscreen, the whole 9 yards, just using a custom-made slice with a .gco file. And if we've got all the parameters for the machines dialed in, then we'll be able to provide those options through a UI in the cloud. So I was pretty stoked to see that anything is possible, even the heat bed in the cloud, and it's actually not going to require a firmware update. That was the big caveat of my contract programmer in Germany. Great guy, but a little hard to get a hold of sometimes. He's busy, which is good. Good programmers are busy. But we'll be able to implement the heat bed, different tip sizes, and even build volumes, if you like. There was a question I missed, Dave. I'm ready to stop. It's 5:12. But if there's any other questions, just wanted you guys to know, yes, we're going to put more features in the cloud so that you guys that want to tweak out your settings, we'll start slow, but definitely not just heat bed, tips, build volume, so we can enable other printers. Will we see a smaller version of the Pro? I find that mechanism more stable and easier to troubleshoot. Thoughts? I have, that's the first question. I assume he means the Plus Pro?
I believe so, yeah. No, Simple Pro.
Simple Pro.
I could be wrong. It could be Plus Pro.
Yeah, I don't know. When you say Pro, I have one now called the Plus Pro. I don't know what mechanism you mean. I don't know. I will say that this printer here is really easy to live with. You know, not 2 Z screws, but 1. It's very basic. I've thought about just for travel reasons, putting a smaller bed on this, but otherwise it needs to be the same. It's really I've never printed 8 inches tall personally on this. Have you? I might have for a test print or something, but I print stuff small, so I get why you might want a smaller printer than this, but I have no plans to do a smaller one right now.
Pro.
Oh, okay, so the Plus Pro is the question. Yes, absolutely. So that dropping Z, yeah, it's really nice. But specifically, I have these unconventional printers that have been available the whole time we've been in business. And I've really I didn't want to do a boxed printer with an enclosure and a door. But I got to say that the abilities of what you can do get a lot easier when you have an enclosure. So yeah, I think you'll see me do a smaller version of that and compete squarely with Ultimaker or I will say Prusa or Taz or Olive Systems. You know, these guys sell really well, but I know I can make a cheaper printer than Ultimaker that's fast. I think our electronics are far superior to theirs, believe it or not. But since we're on the G2 train and we're pressing forward with that, I think you'll find maybe sometime this year you'll be able to buy a desktop printer that is a box, is enclosed, has a very fast, you know, has a 90-watt hot end that has a heated bed that's extremely responsive, and there isn't anything you can't print. We're also partnering this year with, what is the name of, they do the what's the name of them? They do the filament welder that allows you to do multiple colors, and these guys. They're going to kill me that they, I forgot the name of the company. This stuff, they have Mosaic Manufacturing, that's it. Mosaic. They have something called Palette Plus. And it's pretty cool. They weld their filament together. So check that out. So it's clear here and then it's black here. So in their software, they know how long of a length they need to weld together. So you don't need, I mean, Ultimaker's got this dual head thing and they've got some new material. But honestly, it's a big pain in the butt to take the support structure and, you know, to do two colors and to do a support structure with two filament or two extruders is tough. So what'll this do? They'll weld this filament, it'll go into the bot, and you can just keep using your printer bots or whatever. So we're going to partner with them. So I think some of these problems that we've had in the past, there are solutions. It costs money, but there are solutions to make the printing experience a lot easier. So anyway, that's my year is just going to be filled with just making things a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And there will be new models of printers and stuff, but I will be making a couple of CNCs, I told my staff. First, just some stuff that's education-centered. And I have parts to build simple CNCs. So I'm just going to start small, upgrade my crawlbot, and I'll have CNC options too. But so anyway, get on Twitter, get on Google+, tell people what you're going to do this year. A couple more questions and we'll get out of here. I have a high-pitched noise coming from my Simple Pro. I'm thinking it's coming from one of my motors. What do? Well, I would have to hear it. High-pitched sound.
It does sound different than...
Did you hear it?
No, I'm saying the Simple Pro just naturally sounds different than the Simple
That is true.
Metal.
Part of the difference is the drivers are different. So the drivers that power the steppers. This is actually a pretty noisy bot. You know, you have these older drivers that aren't as efficient, and they just operate differently than these. These are quieter. But it just doesn't really, without the fan on, it's very quiet. That fan, you need a lot of air on your print to cool it properly and get a good surface. So, you know, the fan's blowing on the back of the head and it's hard to get on the front, but all of the surface on this looks really good. It's because you have a fan. If you don't have a fan, so that fan is noisy. But, you know, 3D printers have suffered from fan noise the whole time they've been around. So I'm not exactly sure what this high-pitched sound is. I need to hear it, and maybe it would ring a bell.
He said he tweeted it to you, so I guess look at your feed.
Does this new board, the G2, break compatibility with the extruder board? Yes. The old printer board runs Marlin. And so the old printer board with an extruder board, which is actually the ability to run a total of 3 extruders. Most people just do 2. That is all Marlin. So yes, it would break that ability. So if you have a dual head bot, don't upgrade to a G2 because it won't work. Now, there is a new generation of G2 coming out with a better processor, and I'm going to use this board, this new one, not in the Simple Pro. We're going to keep with what we've got because that's all we need. But I'm going to use that new board for our new CNCs because it has step and direction out. and it has a total of, we have X, Y, Z, E, and this one has either 5 or 6, I forget. So you can do dual head or run something else. So we'll have more expandability. I've always made printer boards just with 4, and people begged for a 5th, so I did this extruder board add-on. I'm through with that. The new G2 will have more axes than the old printer board, so I'd wait on that one. Is it possible to run a serial JSON server from the touchscreen control system? Since I don't even know what you're talking about, maybe. So it does run, yes, we actually do from the touchscreen. Okay, so JSON is a way to communicate. It's programming language, I guess, is what you'd call it. Since I'm not a programmer, I'm probably going to trip over my tongue on this. But it uses JSON to the G2 core. Go to the G2 core wiki, and you will see that it communicates with JSON like constantly, all the time. And when we were troubleshooting the board, yeah, we had a terminal open that we could instantly feed it JSON commands and watch all of the data going through the pipe and see the error codes and all that. So yeah, you can get a G2 board and see real-time what's going on by using a terminal and just communicating it with JSON. You can monitor that stuff even with the touchscreen hooked up. So yeah, that's how it communicates. Not just G-code, but two-way communication with JSON. So that's the cool thing about G2 Core. Is there another question after this? Was that it? So yeah, I really think that G2 is, the G2 board is highly underrated, but it's because programmers haven't jumped in and shown the power, I'm not a programmer, of what it can do. So I'm digging in to give some tricks and tips to people that do have a G2. Obviously you can configure it just through the starting G code to have different lead screw, different feed rate because you have a different extruder, heat bed on or off. Let's see, what else? We have these on our support site. We have the code already figured out for you to just drop into your starting G code if you want to use it on the simple with an x-axis upgrade, on the play with the y-axis upgrade, and on a plus. So we've already figured all the hard stuff out for you if you just want to pop it into there. But just understand it's different. It's different. It's more sophisticated, but it has less of a user base, so there's not as much support material available. Although you can go right to the source, the G2 Core Wiki. So anyway, you'll see me on Twitter and elsewhere showing some more tricks that you can do and the UI stuff that we're working on in the cloud to make this heat bed work for you. So kind of technical, kind of boring if you're not interested in the G2 board today, I guess. But I'm excited about the new year, guys. I hope you have a great New Year's Eve and a safe one. And I will see you next week.